I grew up around a lot of music, and then I guess just having that kind of creative environment, it was kind of like a natural part of my everyday life. And then I always was interested in writing music and singing, but I was very shy and almost embarrassed about it because I didn't want to, I don't know, I didn't want to do that whole nepotistic thing that just felt really awkward. So I kept it a secret. And then my mum's friend overheard me singing, I think, in my room or something. And then she said, well, would you like to come and stay with me? And I know these people that write this music very similar to what you like. And I think just for fun, you should just come and see what happens. And I was very hesitant and secretive about it. For some reason, I just felt very shy. And then the trip went really well, and I kind of surprised myself. And then it kind of went from there. But I have journals from when I was really young, and I was always writing poetry and stories. And so then I started to kind of implement writing as well as singing, and it kind of just happened naturally that way.
And do you remember the first time that you sang in public?
Yeah, it was probably in a school play.
Your first video was 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yes, it was about I'd say 6 years ago, because I was playing little secret shows right before then. So but I'd always, I'd sung on friends' albums, and I'd done some voiceover work, and I'd been in the studio on and off for many years before that. So I'd been around people in a public environment singing, so it wasn't completely traumatizing, although to actually finally get to a point where I was on a stage and there were people in a room specifically there just to see me, it was a little bit stressful, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I can imagine. But what are the artists and records that really kind of stand out from, like, when you first kind of thought, music is something that I really respond to?
Well, definitely in my early teens, it was Portishead, Dummy, Massive Attack, Mezzanine, Kate Bush, Hounds of Love, Annie Lennox's Bear, Fiona Apple's Tidal was a big one, and then PJ Harvey, Is This Desire, Tricky Maxinquay, trying to think what else. I really loved Jewel's first album, Pieces of You. That was definitely on heavy rotation. And then Goldfrapp Felt Mountain, I thought was pretty epic when I first heard that. That was really influential because it kind of, I don't know, I feel like they took so many elements of kind of the list I just read to you and kind of put them all together and made it this kind of haunting, really unusual experimental album at the time. So
yeah, all of those are some of my favorites. And which of those do you think kind of have had the most influence on what you do as an artist?
Well, I think just exploring the slightly unique song structure, like the way I write, I don't write typical structured pop song kind of, I guess, ingredients. It's very instinctual. It's almost kind of, I'll get little melodies and verses and choruses and stuff, and then I'll kind of feel that out and put them together in a more kind of structured way a bit later. But I also really love songs that aren't typical and that are a little bit unusual and that just kind of bring out a really interesting kind of like you hear something from one of those tracks and you can't really put your finger on it about what it is that's kind of haunting and unusual about it, but you're really drawn to it. It's a little bit creepy, but you can't help but be interested in finding out what exactly is creepy about it. I kind of really love that element about a lot of those artists. And then, of course, artists like Annie Lennox that just bare their soul, that are just like hits you right in the gut when you hear her, and it's just so powerful, and she emotes so much. And then there's PJ Harvey, who's super raw, same as Fiona Apple, where it's almost like this amazing feminine energy of like being scorned, and also like punches you in the face with their scorn in a really amazing way musically, and I really love that. And also I think Lauryn Hill, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill was a big influence for me too, because I've never really heard lyrics like that in regards to things like breakup and just, you know, feeling like no one's really teaching anyone how to actually express who they are and how they feel. And I thought that was really powerful for me as well.
That was a really amazing record. And so your new single, I've read that you wrote it in New York when you were kind of, I guess you were kind of feeling unsure about who you are. Is that right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was in a really unhealthy situation with someone, and you know, I think when you're in your early 20s, you kind of peg your self-esteem and mood depending on if you feel like you're getting what you think you should be getting from someone else, you know. And then I feel like as you kind of grow into who, you know, getting more comfortable with who you are, you kind of don't allow people to determine that for you. So it was kind of something that I wrote. I was having horrible insomnia and I was just kind of feeling all over the place and really confused. And it just was this funny little lullaby that I wrote. So, and it kind of grew from there. And the producers that I work with definitely pushed for it to be a little heavier in parts. And I was a little apprehensive about that. But I love the way it turned out. So.
yeah, it sounds great. And so so writing for you, does it start, you know, because you're describing like quite a personal situation, and that kind of helped you get over that. But you know, how does it start? You know, if you're feeling something, whether it's good or bad, because obviously it's different for everybody. Some people literally sit down with their guitars and they're like, right, we're going to write a song today. Some people, melodies come to their head. Like, how does it start for you, that kind of songwriting process?
Well, I've written in, you know, many different ways. I think it really depends. It depends on what I hear that's inspired me. Like I went to a park a couple of months ago here, and I was waiting for a friend, and there were people sitting that were playing some kind of old school hip hop on the stereo, and then a little ice cream van drove by playing the little typical ice cream van music, and then there were live musicians playing, and like there were all these incredible sounds coming all together, and it was super inspiring in this really kind of trippy way. And I almost like wanted to run home and like start writing. I mean, it can be something really natural and random like that, or I've, you know, got into sessions with someone with an acoustic guitar, and we've had a mission and an idea and a subject, and we kind of do it that way. I really try and be as diverse as I can in writing in general, because I think it's important to kind of push yourself into trying different ways creatively to kind of, you know, get maybe a result you never imagined you could get. But I'd say the easiest thing for me is that I like to kind of come up with some samples or a rough idea, and then just kind of go off by myself, and then, you know, whatever happens. Sometimes I kind of feel like it's not even me writing it, like something, I don't know, it's almost like channeling in a way. But yeah, I think it really, I think it depends on your kind of mindset when you go into it, which way you want to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And this track, where did you record it?
I recorded that in LA. I was kind of flying back and forth, but I wrote a lot of it in New York. And
was this and did you produce the track, record it? You know, was it this pre-virus and pre-lockdown and all that?
Oh yeah, yes.
So you had this, you know, the plan for the release kind of already before the virus struck. And has the virus impacted any gigging plans?
Yes, it has. But we're getting creative. We're in rehearsals already. I'm going to do some live stream shows, which I think is going to be fun and different. But you know, it's the way forward now. So
when are you going to be live streaming?
September.
Oh, and are you going to do it from home, or are you going to do it from like the rehearsal studio?
At a venue. I've got one booked for a venue, and then another one I think we're going to find a really kind of cool location and just make it very vibey and a little bit more intimate. And so I'm looking forward to that.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's been good to see people getting on with it, but it's a strange situation. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely missing being able to go to gigs. And it's, you know, it's quite worrying just not knowing when they're going to be back. Everybody's postponing them till 2021, but who even knows?
mean, we tentatively had booked some shows for 2021, but who's to say at this point? I hope they happen. That would be great. But, you know, people are saying that live shows won't even go back till 2022. So
Yeah, I read that. Well, I Google live music every 2 weeks to sort of see this doom monger is a saying. So because your musical activity, you know, it started was your first release Raining Gold?
Yes, it was. Yes.
And that's because that has you know, a lot of views on YouTube and quite an epic music video. So I mean, you know, I want to move on to your more recent single again after this, but I was just, you know, how was that kind of jumping in so much at the deep end to creating a video that epic and you know,
Well, a friend of mine, Spencer Susser, directed it, and you know, he's obviously very talented and good at what he does, and he had a really specific idea, and I was like, okay, I'm going to trust you, because when he initially explained to me the storyline, I said, well, that sounds a bit dismal and gruesome, and I don't know, and he's like, no, trust me, it's going to be great. And so you know, I was just fortunate to have a friend that was willing to kind of take a risk, and it was a lot of fun. And I really did not anticipate at all that it was going to get quite as many views, but yeah, I think really people thought I was quite dark and tortured or something. I don't know, because the video is a little bit like that, but I actually love it. I think it's a great video. So
yeah, I thought it was really cool, and you know, it's very, very refreshing in a way. You know, not that I'm knocking some videos, but it is refreshing to see videos in music that aren't just kind of like people posing on yachts and throwing around, you know,
or dance leotard.
exactly. So and then I Can Change was a year later, but so are you gonna follow up this time with an album? Because
Yes, I have a completed album, and obviously we kind of rethink, just based on what's going on in the world right now, how that's going to be released. But you know, I'm going to definitely have a full body of work out. I'd say by next year it'll all be out pretty much. So I'm looking forward to that.
that's awesome. Are you gonna release things as singles and then lead up to the full release?
I think so. Yes, that's the plan for now. I don't know, for some artists, I think releasing a whole album all at once doesn't really make sense, because I don't know many people, including myself anymore, unfortunately, that sit there and listen to a whole album, especially if someone that doesn't have a ton of work out there already. It just, I don't know, concentration spans don't really exist much anymore.
Well, yeah, I agree completely, and it's so easy to sort of say, oh, you know, why won't you listen to my full record? But at the same time, it's like, when was the last time that anyone listened to a full record? And
I know.
does that kind of frustrate you, that the way that music is consumed now? Because as a consumer, we're all guilty of it. But then sometimes the rare instance where you do manage to sit down and read a whole book or listen to a whole, so it's just so much better, so much more rewarding.
And I was thinking about that last night, because I was just kind of sorting out my Spotify playlists and whatnot, and I was looking at some of the music that I used to listen to, and you know, I kind of started listening to PJ Harvey's Is This Desire, actually, and I was like, shit, I remember listening to this as a teenager and just being completely transported into another world, like in my room listening to this album over and over again. And it just, it's a magical thing, especially when you're younger, to have that connection to a body of work like that, which I feel like, you know, not to sound like a fuddy-duddy, but I feel like young people these days kind of missing out on that a bit, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
I think they are, because it's not logical to listen to an album. It would be complete, you know, you have to be a bit kind of alternative. Like most people just probably listen to like Spotify hot hits or you know, the global top 50 on Spotify.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And also, you know, so when you were looking at through your Spotify playlist, did you have kind of things that you'd been meaning to listen to that you hadn't got around to yet, or like?
Yes. Yeah, there's there's definitely a couple albums that I'm kind of like, oh, I really want to sit down and like give this what it deserves and listen to this in a way that I would want someone to listen, you know, to something I had put my blood, sweat and tears into. But I definitely want to get back into making myself do that, basically, you know, listening to a whole album. It's a great thing to be able to do. So.
And do you think that the album as an art form will ever, I mean, it can pretty much never die out. But do you know, what's the most recent record that you can think of that's like a classic record, or even just one that really kind of got to you in the same way that, like, you know, those artists who are primarily from the 90s?
I mean, what was the last album that I listened to back to back recently? I guess it was probably Little Dragon's record. I think it was, I think it was 2 records ago. Can't remember. I think it's called Ultraviolet or something. And I was driving to Palm Springs at the time, and I listened to the whole album, and I just like, this is effing great. I love it. And then, you know, you get attached to certain songs and just listen to them over and over and over again, and they kind of become part of a memory of where you were and what you were doing, and you know, that never leaves. So yeah, it was probably definitely Little Dragon.
And do you think that gigging and live music, you know, if that goes away, do you think that as many people are going to want to try and become, you know, pop stars and rock stars and artists? Do you think the same amount of music will be made? Because I mean, I read after lockdown started, you know, that Spotify had seen something like some ridiculous increase in uploads, 400% or something. So obviously, you know, everybody had gone home and started saying, okay, right, I'm going to finally release my single. But I guess that's kind of flattened out now. Do you think without the live element, you know, you personally, is it the live element that draws you, or would you always want to express yourself through songwriting?
Well, I think it's just such an organic part of who I am. I can't really imagine not being able to do that, even if it, you know, and it's not, basically what I'm saying is, I think certain artists do this because that's just what they do and that's just who they are, whether it gets to 1 billion people or 10 people. So I think that, you know, people that have that inside of them will always create. As far as the live element of affecting things, I mean, I hope we get back to being able to go to shows and people gathering and enjoying music. And I mean, there's nothing more incredible than going to a show and looking around and everyone's enjoying the same song. And, you know, like, to lose that would be devastating. But I think, you know, humans are adaptable, and I think, you know, creativity is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think people will find a way, however that may be, to express themselves and still get some of that same experience that you get from live shows. I mean, that's what everyone's trying to do right now with the live streaming shows. So I have hope.
Yeah, for sure. And it would be great to see your live stream shows in September. But so with Shared Something with the Night, it's been like has it been 4 years since the last time you used it? So how come you took so long off, having made like a really good start?
Well, I unfortunately at the time had some issues with my representation, and things got really messy. And, you know, I think when you're in a certain position, it can sometimes attract people with not necessarily the best intentions, you know, I think more ulterior motives and things like that. And so, you know, I got entangled in those issues. And then I think, you know, when you're pretty sensitive and you're a creative, those things kind of go hand in hand. And I think when you deal back to back with a lot of those kinds of situations, you can kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, what is going on here? Is this worth it? Am I doing something wrong? How do I just do what I know I can do with integrity, and hopefully, you know, find people that I can trust that can help me get this out there and do this the right way. I mean, it took me a while, and, you know, legally there were some issues. And so it was just kind of a mess. And, you know, before you know it, time goes by and you're like, shit. But, also during that time met some incredible writers and producers that I ended up finishing an album with that I'm really proud of and really excited about. And I kind of ventured into some different territories music wise that I, was really surprised by. So I think all in all, looking back on it, it wasn't the end of the world. Was it ideal? No, but I'm just happy to finally have a completed album and, to get it out there. So
when did you start recording the new record?
I started recording the new record in 2018. At the end of 2017, I started writing, and then we started recording in 2018.
Okay, so in actual fact, even though it was like supposedly a 4-year gap, it was actually a much shorter gap.
Mm.
And you kind of picking yourself up again. That's actually a very short gap between what sounds like an absolute nightmare.
Yes.
And you pick yourself up again and starting off, and
yes.
And so during that time when it was like you were involved in those kind of complications. You mentioned you kind of like, is this worth it and stuff. What was there ever a time where you're like, did you ever get like musicked out as it were? Like,
yeah, I think that can happen, especially I think sometimes, I mean, I'm sure you've come across this with other musicians and artists and stuff before, where it's like you lose your ears for your own music when you're so close to something. You kind of need to take a break. And I've gone through periods like that, and I've also gone through periods like that with just music in general, because I just get too heady about it and things like that. But it's never anything permanent. It's very much an intended break. I never got to a point where I was like, oh, I just, I can't do this, because it's just so part of who I am. I can't imagine even having any type of happiness in my life without being able to have music in my life in some capacity. So.
Well, I mean, I completely agree with that in the sense that I can't imagine life without music. But having said that, there've definitely been times when everybody gets in situations that can be difficult, and something like people maybe taking advantage of you or whatever. Like when you're trying to do your best and release your art, like it's very good to see that you've kind of moved past that and are about to release your first album.
Yes.
And beyond this, what do you reckon you're going to do? You've got the live streams coming up, album next year. Are you still writing?
Yes, I start writing pretty soon. I think after the live stream shows, and then I always like to keep writing, even if I'm in the middle of promoting something, or I think that's important. Even if it's not the best work, I think it's important to kind of keep that muscle strengthened and to keep, meeting different types of people that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of collaborating with. I think that's always really interesting when you're both from two different worlds musically. I think some of the most amazing stuff can kind of come together that way. So.
And in terms of your voice, like, do you have to do stuff to take care of that? Do you do like all the vocal warm-ups and stuff, or is it something that just comes completely naturally to you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up taking a lot of music and vocal music theory, and so I always like to kind of make sure that I'm keeping in shape in that way, although sometimes it's great to have a break, but it is it's half and half. Yes, it comes naturally, and yes, it's important to maintain it as well. I mean, that's just in my situation. So
yeah, I mean, you get people giving totally different answers to that, but it's always really interesting to hear. Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time for doing this. And I always finish with a question, which is, who, if you were, because the series is called Greatest Music of All Time, if you were to name your three favorite artists of all time, who would they be? So you've named some amazing artists earlier in the interview, but if you just had to choose three, or who would they be?
Wow, that's a tough one. Definitely Kate Bush, Annie Lennox, and PJ Harvey. That's just my personal favorites.
They're all icons, and we've interviewed Annie Lennox for this, so that was an incredible interview. And we need to get more women in the series, because it's been too male dominated. It was going to be season 1 male artists, season 2 female artists, but then coronavirus happened.
Ah.
So thank you so much for coming on the show, because I can't be seen to not have the right balance. And of course, as you've just proven with your answers, there are just as many good girls as there are boys.